Welcome to Teen to MD, where we explore the fascinating world inside your mind. Today, we're diving into a curious mental habit: why your brain turns probability into a story. It's a process that happens automatically, shaping how you see the world, from weather forecasts to major life decisions. Have you ever noticed that when someone says there's a 30% chance of rain, you don't really picture the number? Instead, you might imagine walking to school under dark, heavy clouds. You might even picture yourself getting caught in a downpour without an umbrella. That abstract number, 30%, instantly transforms into a concrete scenario. This isn't just you. It's how the human brain is wired. We don't naturally sit comfortably with abstract probabilities. Our minds prefer to convert that uncertainty into a story, something tangible and easy to understand. So why does this happen? Early humans weren't calculating the precise probability of a predator lurking in the tall grass. Instead, they learned to interpret patterns. If a rustling sound often meant a dangerous animal was nearby, the brain didn't waste time on numbers. It built a quick narrative of threat. Rustling means danger, so I must react. This kind of story-based thinking allowed for swift, life-saving action. Even today, our brains favor these coherent explanations over abstract calculations because a story feels actionable. It gives us a sense of what to do next, which is far more comforting than a cold, hard number. Another key reason is that stories reduce our cognitive load. Thinking in terms of probability is hard work. It requires significant mental effort to understand percentages, base rates, and conditional likelihoods. It puts a strain on your attention and working memory. They neatly organize information into a sequence with a clear cause and effect. Once you frame uncertainty as a narrative, like, if I go out, I might get soaked, it becomes much easier for your brain to process. It's a way of simplifying complex data into something that feels manageable and less overwhelming. Now let's talk about emotion. When a probability becomes a story, emotion almost always enters the picture, acting as an anchor. A 1% chance of contracting a rare disease doesn't sound like much on its own. But if your brain translates that 1% into vivid, frightening imagery of being sick, that small risk suddenly feels enormous. The emotional centers in your brain, like the amygdala, become highly active and influence how you perceive that probability. The story gains weight and significance because it feels personal and immediate, not like some distant, abstract statistic. Your feelings about the imagined outcome can completely overshadow the actual likelihood of it happening. This tendency is further strengthened by something called the availability effect. Our brains have a bias toward information that is easy to recall. If a dramatic, memorable event comes to mind easily, we tend to think that similar events are more likely to happen. The news media often amplifies this pattern. We are constantly exposed to stories of rare but vivid incidents, plane crashes, lottery wins, shark attacks. These stories are far more memorable and easier to imagine than the countless common but less dramatic outcomes, like having a safe flight or just another ordinary day. As a result, our perception of probability becomes distorted. The story is just more accessible and emotionally resonant than the underlying statistics. Neuroscience offers another fascinating layer to this. When you give it probabilistic information, it doesn't just leave that uncertainty as a blank space. Instead, it starts to run simulations of possible futures. And these simulations almost always take the form of a narrative. Your brain fills the void of the unknown with imagined sequences of events. In this sense, the act of prediction is an act of storytelling. It's how the brain models the world to prepare for what might be coming. There's also a powerful psychological benefit to this process. Stories provide a sense of control. Let's be honest, uncertainty is uncomfortable. Probability is a constant reminder that outcomes are not guaranteed and that much of life is outside our direct control. By turning that probability into a story, we create a sense of psychological grounding. Even if the imagined outcome is negative, the act of picturing it makes us feel more prepared. The narrative imposes a structure on randomness, making it feel less chaotic and more manageable, even when it's not. It's a coping mechanism to deal with the inherent unpredictability of the world. Now, it's important to understand that this mechanism isn't necessarily a flaw in our thinking. Converting probability into a story is a fundamental part of how we learn, make decisions, and communicate with each other. Stories help us remember important experiences, anticipate potential consequences, and warn others about risks. The challenge arises when our narrative instinct completely overrides an accurate understanding of the statistics. The brain, as great as strength its ability to weave compelling narratives can. become a cognitive bias when our emotions and vivid imaginings replace a clear-eyed evaluation of the data. So how can we get better at this? The key is to be aware of this tendency. By understanding that our brain is translating numbers into stories, we can learn to make better decisions. When faced with a probability, take a moment to examine the base rates. What do the statistics actually say? Try to mentally separate the vivid, emotional scenario you're imagining from the statistical reality. The goal isn't to eliminate stories from your thinking entirely. That would be impossible and even unhelpful. Instead, it's about recognizing when a story is shaping your perception more than the data is, and then finding a healthy balance between your narrative instinct and your analytical thinking. Let's wrap this up. Your brain turns probability into a story because stories are the primary tool humans use to make sense of an uncertain world. Narratives reduce complexity, anchor our emotions, and create a comforting sense of coherence and control. When we recognize that we are translating numbers into imagined futures, we gain the mental space to step back and ask ourselves, does the story I'm telling myself truly match the statistics? Understanding this internal shift can fundamentally change how we interpret risk, evaluate evidence, and perceive the vast realm of possibility that surrounds us. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into the mind interesting, don't forget to subscribe for more.